Kindergarten, week 17, living and non-living. Teachers, we're going to use a real live stuffed bear to get kids' attention on the difference between living and non-living. And then you can see that I'm using hula hoops for my two classification rings of living and non-living. And what I'm going to do is just talk about what that bear needs in order to live. And kids will realize that they're also living, and so I start with them. And they tell me about eating. They always think running and moving is one of them. But I also explain that plants can't run and move, but they still have to make their own food. So we talked about the sun. I happen to have the solar system up in the ceiling, so we use the sun with the bear right underneath to explain that he gets his energy from the sun by eating either different animals, and I use models. I'm going to use this lizard in my living ring. There's a big controversy, I think, over using scientific models to represent living. Even though it's made of plastic, kids need to know that we use models in science. So I have used different models to represent what I need them to know about living. Like, here's my plant. It's just a little aquarium plant that I have, and I use that filled up with the sun. And it's green, and it needs that energy from the sun to make its sugar inside the leaves. And maybe the bear eats the plant, gets his energy from the food. Or he eats this lizard, and he gets the energy from the food. The mount just makes it more real for him to see that that animal's eating and getting that transfer of energy from the sun. And then I use other objects, like we talk about movement. So I have a ball, and I say, well, if it's moving, does that make it living? No, so they put it in their non-living ring. I have a bottle of water. They think that because things move, it's living, so we talk about it. You know, is that water just because it's moving? Is it living? Does it use the sun's energy? Does it make more water? And of course, the answer is no, so we classify it as non-living. I have a huge rock that we use. We go through the same scenario. I like big objects that they can actually see and hold and touch, and I pass these around and let the kids place them in the right rings. It always goes back to movement, so I try to find things that have movement that catches their interest, like this oil's moving. Is it living? No. Does it need the sun's radiant energy? No. So I guess we'd have to put it in non-living. So I don't answer these questions for them. I ask the questions and make them walk through the answers. And I have a pot of soil. It's always good for them to see, well, what is that? Soil, is it living? And we go through all the same questions, and of course we classify it in the non-living. I have several representations of living. Like I have a stuffed rattlesnake. You know, I'm going to do something to catch kids' attention. So, sure, I'm going to use a rattlesnake or something that's living that's going to catch your attention. So, what we're doing is just making two classification rings using hula hoops and this big bear that excites them and gets them thinking. And then I always use their own bodies. Like how little were they when they were babies? How much have they grown in 5 years? How did they get that way? Well, they had to eat. They grow. And of course, they understand that in order for living things to go on, they have to have young or babies. So that's this week's lesson.